All right, hello everybody. Welcome. My name is Dr. Amanda Weiss. I'm a licensed psychologist and I've been in practice for going on 14 years now. I've been fortunate enough to be with NOMV's Veterinary Mental Health Support, formerly Veterinary Mental Health Initiative, for the past few years, facilitating free support groups and individual sessions for vet med professionals and providing psychoeducational based webinars like the one that we're having today. I currently have a private practice where I specialize in acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness-based self-compassion, grief, traumatic bereavement, pet loss, mood and anxiety disorders, and I have an expertise in treating the unique challenges and stressors faced by vet med and animal welfare professionals. And so enough about me. Today is number 2 of our monthly webinar series on mindfulness-based skills. Today's topic is on mindfulness in daily living. So over the next hour, I will share some fun facts about mindfulness, and you will learn about informal mindfulness in particular. By the end, my hope is that you will have a plethora of tangible options to incorporate mindful moments throughout your day, regardless of where you are and what you're doing. And so what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a relational quality. It's not what we are looking at, but how we are looking at it. So mindfulness involves 3 core aspects: attention, intention, and attitude. So paying attention on purpose, being grounded with what is happening in the present moment, approaching situations and inner experiences with curiosity and openness, and being non-judgmental, so not labeling, judging, or criticizing. And so mindfulness is noticing your thoughts, feelings, sensations, and other inner experiences in the here and now. It is a way of paying attention more wisely with the full resources of our senses, our body, mind, and heart. And so not mindful equals mindless or mindiness, being distracted or inattentive, on autopilot, being reactive or impulsive. All of these are examples of not being present, aware, or in the moment. Whereas mindful equals being more thoughtful, focused, aware, present, and responsive. So the essence of mindfulness is to bring awareness to everything we do in life. Our minds are like these time-traveling machines. It's just what they do naturally. And it's also natural and normal to zone out. However, we miss out on so much when we're frequently on autopilot, replaying the past or worrying about the future. So the invitation is to be at where you are and to take up residency in your own awareness. And so you might be thinking, if this is what our minds do naturally, why put in the effort and the work to stay in the present moment? Well, I am so glad that you asked, right? So our minds are like these don't get eaten machines, right? Wired from back in the day of, the cave people, right? Eat or be eaten. And so they're trying to protect us and keep us safe. But our minds typically go about it in an ineffective and oftentimes destructive manner, right? We overanalyze and ruminate. We get entangled in our mind's elaborate stories about what is going to happen or what has happened already. We get sucked into our mind's harsh and critical judgments about ourselves and others. And so beyond missing out on what's happening in the moment, this is particularly unhelpful and possibly harmful because in those moments, we experience the thoughts and feelings connected to whatever it is that's playing out in our mind, like it was actually happening. And so that's going to then influence how you think, feel, and act next. The reality is that we are of little use, or at least much less functional, when we're not regulated. And if you think about, the oxygen mask, there's a reason why we're told to put our oxygen mask on first. And that's because, in like maybe 30 to 60 seconds, if your oxygen mask isn't on, you're going to be unconscious. right? And so how can you then help others if you're unconscious? And so the idea is that when we show up for ourselves in this way, it then allows us to continue to show up for others. And so hopefully by now you agree that being mindful is not only important, but that it's also necessary. Right? So being mindful is important and necessary. It improves emotional regulation, stress management, physical and mental health, self-esteem. It improves relationships. It enhances mental clarity, cognitive performance, attention, concentration, listening skills, and so much more. And so we have formal mindfulness and informal mindfulness. Formal mindfulness is pretty much what it sounds like. It's practicing mindfulness formally, like setting aside dedicated time for meditation. In your industry, though, you are kept very busy, right? I don't need to tell you that. And many don't have time to formally practice mindfulness skills while you're at work. That is okay. Instead, you can informally practice staying in the moment, in this present moment with purpose throughout the day. So informal mindfulness involves consistently weaving mindfulness into your existing routines through engaging in mindful moments and bringing mindful awareness into everyday activities. And so during informal practice, you notice when the mind gets hijacked, and then kindly and repetitively turn your attention back to the task at hand. By incorporating mindfulness into your everyday activities, you're actually strengthening your mind's ability to stay engaged and be in the present moment. It also decreases anxiety and improves quality of life by bringing compassionate, spacious awareness to your daily tasks. Sounds delightful, right? um, and so, in terms of the purpose of mindfulness, the goal is not to get rid of thoughts or feelings. Spoiler alert, getting rid of thoughts and feelings is as impossible as being perfect, which another spoiler alert, imperfection is unattainable, and so is getting rid of our thoughts and feelings. The good news is that we don't need this to happen to get the benefits of mindfulness. The intention is to focus our attention on something in the present. And when a thought or feeling arises, we keep bringing our attention back, with kindness, with gentleness. And so when your mind wanders, first congratulate yourself for noticing, and then re-engage with who or what is in front of you. And in a few moments, we'll look at, some examples and suggestions of what that might look like. And so just a little disclaimer, while you're practicing mindfulness informally, your mind will wander, right, as you're practicing. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I know this just because that's what our mind does best, right? It wanders. And so in a very important way, cultivating mindfulness in your daily life is the real practice. And the goal is essentially to learn to begin again. We cannot do that if we do not stray, right? We let go and then we come back. And so if this is your mind, every time your mind wanders, into the future, or it wanders into the past, and we bring it back to the present, we're essentially flexing that mindful muscle. We are strengthening that mindful muscle. And so while the goal of mindfulness, is to be in the present moment, the goal of mindfulness practice, is for our mind to go astray so that we can notice and practice bringing it back into the present moment. And so while being mindful, is relatively easier than remembering to be mindful, the good news is that when you practice anything, you can get better at it, right? When you practice mindfulness, you can get better at it. When you practice self-doubt or self-criticism, you get better at it. When you practice self-compassion, you get better at it. So anything we do and keep doing, we will get better at it, whether we intend, whether it's helpful or not. Little assistant is joining me. Okay, and so before we move on to actually filling your informal mindfulness toolkit, I'm going to invite us all to actually take a mindful moment. So I invite you to, if you're sitting on a chair, just notice your body on the seat. Notice how the cushion or the seat feels against your body. Notice the pressure, the sensations. You can push your feet into the floor, wiggle your toes. Notice those sensations in your feet. I invite you to take a slow inhale and exhale. And as you inhale, notice the temperature of the air as you breathe in, and then the subtle change in the temperature as you breathe out. I invite you to take a moment to scan your body from the top of your head to the tips of your toes and notice any tightness or unpleasant sensations. You can move your body around however you need, tense and release those muscles. You can take a deep breath into any unpleasant sensations and exhale with a sigh. Noticing the pace maybe of your breathing. If it's fast, try intentionally slowing it down. But in any way, using your senses, being able to connect with your body and what's happening underneath your skin. All right. And so, while your body was physically in the present moment, prior to taking that mindful moment, your mind may have been somewhere else, right? And so when we transition from one thing to the next, as you hopefully just experienced, it can be helpful to take a mindful moment so both your body and your mind can arrive. Right. So, for example, as you're going from appointment to appointment, you may be thinking about what just happened while also with thinking about what will be waiting for you in the next room. Right. Or maybe you're talking to one client after another and having multiple conversations playing in your mind at once, all of which are recipes for mindiness and overwhelm. Okay. So instead, between tasks and appointments, whether you're walking, standing, sitting, depending on where you are and what you're doing, here are some things you can try, right? So box breathing, right? Slowly inhaling for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, slowly exhale for 4 counts, and hold for 4 counts. And you can repeat that for as much time as you have, right? So rather than, replaying everything that's happening, having so much going on in your mind as you're walking, or transitioning from one thing to the next, right? You're engaging in this pace breathing, right? You can also take a deep breath in and tense the muscles in your body. Right? Hold that for a moment, then slowly release your breath and relax your muscles as you say relax in your mind. Again, you can do this once or, 5 times or anything in between, depending on how much time you have in between, one thing and the next. As we did in the practice, you can breathe into any unpleasant sensations and exhale with a deep sigh. You could do this as you're walking, and certainly you can do this as you're sitting, moving and stretching the body and really feeling the stretch, feeling where exactly in your body do you feel that stretch happening, bringing your attention there rather than to whatever's going on in noggin land. You can look around the room or the hallway and name 5 things that you see, maybe 5 things that you haven't noticed before. or you can look 4 or 5 things that are of a particular shape or color. You can also slowly inhale essential oils and savor the smell for a few moments. If this is something you find particularly helpful, you could even put a little dab of the essential oil under your nostrils. So wherever you're going into next, that, aroma is still with you. If you're walking from one thing to the next, I invite you to take intentional steps, right? So as you're walking, you lift your foot, then you place your heel, and then you place your toe. Then you lift your foot, you place your heel, you place your toe, right? Somebody who's observing this may wonder, what is happening there, which is a great invitation to share with them about mindful walking, right? Rather than running, from one room to the next, maybe, 5 of those steps can be done mindfully, right? And so as you're doing this, on each down step, pushing your feet into the floor and bringing all of your awareness to the sensations of your foot uh, with your feet each step, right? And notice the pressure alternating from the right foot to the left foot with each step. You could also sip cold water mindfully, right? So hopefully you're hydrating through the day anyways. And so the invitation is just to bring some awareness to that action. So as you're taking a sip, notice the temperature of the water as it enters your mouth and then subtly changes, as it moves around your mouth. Noticing the reflex to swallow and the temperature of the water as it goes down your throat and how that temperature may be warmer than when it initially entered your mouth. And so these are all suggestions, again, of, having mindful transitions when we're going from one thing to the next or one task to the next, allowing for both our mind and body to arrive. You can also, incorporate informal mindfulness when you're interfacing with patients and clients, right? So as you're standing in the room, maybe your mind is wandering, notice the temperature of the air as you slowly breathe in and breathe out, right? Just like we did in our practice, right? As we breathe in, the air is a little bit cooler than when we breathe out. As you're standing in the room, you can also push your feet, purposely into the floor, wiggling your toes, bringing all of your awareness to the sensations of your feet on the floor, right? Whoever is in front of you isn't going to notice that, you're putting some extra pressure on your feet. And so this is something that you'll notice, but, nobody else around you is going to really be noticing this. You can also practice informal mindfulness, with clients by listening with more than your ears, right? So much of our communication is nonverbal, right? And so we miss out on information and understanding when we only hear the client's words or are stuck in our own minds already responding to what the client is saying, right? So instead, notice their affect, notice what's happening on their face. Notice their body posture. Okay? What kind of information might this be providing you that can help know, how best to respond to this person and to understand what they may be experiencing, but maybe not expressing so much in their words. Okay? You can also use the animal that you're with to ground you in the present moment, right? So looking into their eyes, which also has a side effect of maybe a little boost in oxytocin or dopamine, right? You can note as you're examining them, noticing the texture of their fur, feathers, or scales, right? But again, using the animal that you're already working with as an object to keep you, grounded in the present. If you're holding an object like a pen, in your hand or a clipboard, you can notice the texture of that object, and how it feels in your hands, right? So that can help, keep you in the present moment. You can also have, another type of object maybe in your pocket, like a paper clip or a little stone or a stress ball, something that, is gonna allow you to kind of make contact with the sensations, the feelings of that object in your hand, again, rather than, focusing on what's happening in your mindscape. I also invite you to notice and name any thoughts and feelings that may be arising throughout the appointment or the phone call or whatever task it is that you're doing with the client or patient, right? So noticing and naming, here is impatience. I'm noticing frustration. I'm having the thought that, this client is going to react poorly when I deliver this news. Or, aha, there it is again. The I'm an imposter story. I know that one. Thanks, mind. Right. So rather than getting entangled with these elaborate, stories or these, unpleasant feelings that may pop up and having that impact, how you show up in the next moment, right? You can notice and name these feelings and these thoughts, and then return back to what's happening in your present moment. Right? If you happen to be doing work on the computer, you know, as you're typing, when your fingers are hitting the keys, notice the textures, the sounds, and sensations, right? Maybe even notice the brightness of your screen and how that feels on your eyes, right? But again, we're bringing awareness to everything that we're doing here. Okay. We can also bring informal mindfulness, to our morning and evening routines. And so when you do, your morning and evening routines, the invitation is to totally focus on what you're doing, the body movements, the taste, the touch, the smell, the sight, the sound, etc. Right? So for example, in the morning or the evening when you're showering, notice the sound of the water as it sprays out of the nozzle and hits your body as it gurgles, down the drain hole. Notice the temperature of the water, and the feel of it, in your hair or on your skin, how it feels on your shoulders, how it feels running down your legs. Notice the smell of the soap and the shampoo, feel, the soap and shampoo against your skin. Notice how the texture and consistency changes as you scrub. Notice the sight of the water droplets on the walls or the shower screen. Notice the water dripping down your body and the steam rising upwards, depending on the temperature of the water. Notice the movements as your arms, wash or scrub or shampoo, and also notice the pace and the pressure that you're applying, right? As an act of self-compassion, try to make those movements slow and gentle. And when thoughts arise, acknowledge, right? Acknowledge them, let them be, and bring your attention back to the shower. Similarly, as you're washing your face, notice the sounds and pressure of the water as it flows out of the nozzle. Any subtle changes to that temperature and pressure. Notice the temperature of the water as it hits your face. Noticing the smell and texture of your face wash or soap and the sensations that you feel as it hits your skin and as your hands are rubbing against your skin. And just notice how that texture may change. Right? When you're brushing your teeth, right? Rather than thinking about, all the things that happened that day or all the things you need to do that day, be aware of your feet on the floor, the temperature and the textures on the soles of your feet. Notice the appearance, smell, flavor, and texture of the toothpaste. Notice your arm moving from side to side and the sound of the brush against your teeth. Bring awareness to each and every tooth and the sensation of the brush against your gums. Right? As you're getting dressed or undressed, notice the color, shape, and texture of the clothes. Bring awareness to each part of the body. As you're putting the clothes on, or taking the clothes off, one leg and arm at a time. Notice the sensation of the garment on your skin, right? As you're putting it off putting it on and also as you're taking it off, depending on what time of day. Notice how the temperature of your skin may subtly change a little bit as you're putting the clothes on or taking them off. You know, as you may be looking at yourself in the mirror getting dressed or undressed, be aware of any harsh or critical thoughts that may arise. Acknowledge those thoughts, and then return back to, what you were doing, putting the next, arm into it, taking the next arm out, or moving on to the next, part of your nighttime routine. While you're eating breakfast or dinner, you can also bring in formal mindfulness, at least with maybe the first couple of bites, right? Notice the foods, colors, and aromas. Take one slow, small bite at a time. Pay attention to what's happening in your mouth. Notice the flavors, textures, and temperature of the food and how it changes. Note when you need to swallow, and then feel, how the food moves down your throat. Check in with your stomach, periodically as you're eating. How full is your stomach tank? In the morning, as you're making and drinking your coffee, right? As it's brewing, notice that aroma starting to fill your kitchen or your home. Before you take the first sip, slowly inhale the smell, right? And depending on whether it's iced coffee or hot coffee, noticing the coldness or heat on the tip of your nose when you're taking that smell. Then as you're taking that sip, bringing awareness to the taste, the smell, the temperature of the coffee in your mouth and your throat, right? As those first couple of sips go down. You can also bring informal mindfulness, to your chores, right? Such as laundry, washing dishes, prepping or cooking meals, right? So for example, if you choose to bring mindfulness to washing dishes, be aware of the very first movement when your hands meet the water, noticing the temperature of the water and how it changes, mindfully picking up one item at a time and noticing the texture and the weight of that item. Notice, the texture of your hands and how your skin changes as it makes more and more contact with the water, right? Gently acknowledge the thoughts that arise, let them be, and then return, your attention to the item in your hand or the movement that you were doing with the sponge, right? Also notice any urges of wanting to get on and do something else. And just, you notice that urge and then name it. You know, Here is the urge to, go on to the next thing that I have to do, or I'm noticing impatience, right? You can also, bring awareness to the feeling of satisfaction or productivity, when you finished. The important thing is to remember again and again, your attention will wander. And as soon as you realize this has happened, gently acknowledge it. You can even note what may have distracted you and then bring your attention back to the activity or task at hand. Um, the last part of informal mindfulness that I'll share is incorporating that on your commute to and from work. I also know we're about to hit the 12:30 mark, and so we're going to go a couple minutes over. If you need to jump off, that's totally okay. This will be this is being recorded, so you can pop in to see what you may have missed. Um, and so mindfulness on the commute to and from work, right? As you're driving, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you get to where you're going and you're like, wait, how did I even get there? Right? You may have been mindless or distracted. And so instead, we can notice, objects in front of us, the colors that we're seeing in front of us and around us, maybe shapes of certain objects in nature or shapes of, different cars in front of you. You can practice progressive muscle relaxation using the steering wheel, right? Your hands are on the steering wheel anyways. And so intentionally squeeze your hands in and then release and relax. Squeeze again, release and relax. You could even bring your, shoulders and your arms into that squeeze. This is particularly helpful if you're actually stuck in traffic where you may be tense anyways. And so if the tension is there, we're just intentionally squeezing into it and then releasing and relaxing. Bring mindfulness to the music that you might be listening to. Think about how you're feeling and what song might be particularly helpful or fitting with your mood. Or how do you, want to be feeling in this moment? And what song could you play that may kind of influence how you're feeling? Okay. If you're having, dread thoughts on your way to work, gently acknowledge those and then change the noggin channel to a few things that you might be looking forward to in that day or might be grateful for, right? If you're having worry thoughts to or from work, acknowledge and then think about what is in your control in that moment. And then acknowledge, anything that comes up surrounding what isn't in your control there. But again, really, kind of tuning into what is in your control and taking action on that. If there's critical thoughts, whether it's, going into work or coming home from work, acknowledge those thoughts and then pivot to identifying, a value that you acted on or something you did well or appreciated about yourself that day. Right? The idea isn't that we're trying to avoid or push away, maybe these more harsh, critical, unpleasant thoughts. We definitely want to acknowledge them and have space. And we want to then make more space and balance it out with something more neutral or pleasant or helpful, right? The stuff that, is difficult and the stuff that is important and matters, right? We have room and space for all. Um, and before you go into, your work building or you go into your home, once you turn that car off or, you get off a subway or a train, depending on how you commute to work, I invite you to take a moment to tune in to what's happening under your skin, right? Notice kind of the quality of your thoughts. Notice any tension or unpleasant sensations. Um, Notice your breathing, right? And then, maybe taking a moment to do some of that pace breathing, or, which is the box breathing, or taking a moment before you go inside to mindfully connect with nature, get curious about an object in nature. Similar to, a dog, taking a walk. They approach that same plant every time with awe and amazement, like they've never seen that plant before, right? We can bring that quality into our connections as well. And so these are just some suggestions. I invite you to reflect on your everyday activities, tasks, and routines, and identify opportunities to infuse mindful moments into your daily living, right? Pick a few opportunities to start with, right? And experiment to see, what works or fits best in terms of your routine. Be creative, be flexible, be realistic in managing your expectations of, what this may look like. Be practical, start really small and then build, right? The smaller we start, the more likely we are to be able to follow through with it. And be patient. This is novel to you, and you've probably been practicing and have gotten really good at not being mindful, in your everyday stuff, for a while now, as many humans, have. And so try to, be as consistent as possible while giving yourself an abundance of grace and knowing that it'll take time to strengthen the mindful muscle. And so, as we wrap up this month's webinar on mindfulness in daily living, I want to remind you that the only way to have leverage to transform the future, and the future even being, 10 minutes ahead, the only way to do that is to show up in the present moment. Right? And the only way to guarantee that the next moment is different is to show up in this moment right here, right now. And throughout your day, showing up in each moment with heart is a radical act of sanity, wisdom, and love. Right? So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I wish you many mindful moments today and every day in your daily living. And I hope that you can join us for next month's mindfulness-based skills webinar. Take care.